couldn't do. She my groovy little baby, little Latin loopy-loo. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, loopy-loo. Sing it, loopy.
I call to order the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for Wednesday, January 7th. And Commissioner Eggleston, if you'd please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Petches, if you'd please call the roll.
Commissioner Eggleston?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Chair Garden?
Here.
Commissioner Crandall?
Here.
Commissioner Ruland? Here. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Okay. We have a set of minutes to approve. The minutes from December 17th, 2014. Do we have any changes or?
I was not here, so I need to recuse.
I do as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually before the minutes. The special orders of business.
Oh, all right. We'll return to that then. Thank you for correcting me, Jim. I appreciate it. We have two special orders of business tonight. One is the selection of Design Review Subcommittee alternate. Is there a motion for an alternate?
Well, I know, Michael is a news member, but he's an architect and has, I think, some insight and interest in it. So I'll toss his hat into the ring if he's interested in being an alternate.
I'm interested.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Were you on to second? Or, oh, okay. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Welcome, Michael.
And there is a date to keep open, February 20th.
February 25th, I will be missing that, so we'll need a replacement for that session.
And Jim, remind me what we need to do to arrange to have an alternate or have any commissioner attend design review. Do we have to notice it or not? So as long as he doesn't comment and participate, and he's just there as a member of the public.
I'm sorry, to come in when there's already three commissioners there, then we do have to notice it because there would be a quorum.
Okay. It's too late to notice for the next meeting, is that
Right.
correct? Mm-hmm. So would there be a meeting before the 25th? Yes, there would be. Can we notice for the meeting after that he could attend, so he at least sees one meeting in action?
I will make a note of that so we can arrange it.
Okay, thank you. You might want to keep that date open, Michael.
That'd be the second.
Amber's nodding, so I'm going to take her word for it because she must be presenting something at that meeting. So yes, if you would, please. Okay, then we have the selection for Phase 1 Mobility Task Force, and we are to select one or two Planning Commission members. And actually, I'd like to make a motion with regard to this. I would like to move that we select two Planning Commissioners, and I would move that they be Mr. Brown and Mr. Ruland. And my reasoning on this is severalfold. One is I think we definitely need to have two members. I think it's very important that, having been the body responsible for traffic for some time, that we have significant representation on this committee. So I think we definitely need to have two experienced people, and certainly these two gentlemen are very experienced. To be frank, I actually would have loved to serve on this task force myself, but I'm up for reappointment in June, and I don't think it's fair to the community to have the possibility of a commissioner who might have to be replaced in a few months. And I think the continuity is very important. So I think the criteria for me in the selection of these two members is somebody who's not being not up for reappointment, and somebody who has a great deal of experience, and I think they fill the bill for that. So that is my motion. Is there a second?
I was on the last traffic task force, I'd be interested in serving on this one.
Yeah, I too. I am definitely interested in serving on the traffic task force. So I've had a growing interest in traffic as we've been on the planning commission the last few years. So.
And you served on GPAC and dealt with, and
Yeah, with the reviewing the whole bike and ped master plan and all the mobility element and all the work we did actually in GPAC, and then taking that here. I think it's been a lot of reviews of that material.
yeah. So I think they'd both serve us in good stead. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes 6-0. All right, now, I'm back in order, so if we could take a look at those minutes. So the study session for December 17th, and as stated earlier, Commissioner Eggleston and I will be recusing ourselves from this vote, but I'm still allowed to take the vote, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Before you take the vote, I just wanted to, I did watch the video and wanted to thank Commissioner here for his wonderful job for leading the commission that time, and also wanted to thank staff for reviewing my questions and answering my questions that I had written. So thank you.
If there are no proposed changes, I'll move that we accept the study session, approve the study session minutes for December 17th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And then, so that's 4-2. Well, 4-0-2. Okay, and then the regular minutes, please. Any changes?
Again, if there's no changes, I'll move we approve the regular minutes of December 17th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's 4-0-2 as well. Okay, and that brings us to the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this for oral communication? This? Okay. For oral and written communication, members of the audience may address the Commission on matters of public interest which pertain to the city and are not otherwise on the agenda. If you wish to speak, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and city of residence, and make your presentation. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. This is Mr. Eric Wills on the topic of temporary fences. Mr. Wills?
I hope my items go as smoothly as the last 10 minutes here. Dear Commissioners, my name is Eric Wills. I did pass this out, what I'm going to read tonight for your record. I'm a resident of Laguna Beach and also a resident of Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park. I'm the Vice President and on the Board of Directors of Capistrano Shores, Inc., who's the owner of the mobile home park. CUP 14-389, which is not on the agenda today, is for 7 temporary fence enclosures on the east side of the mobile home park, bordering North El Camino Real. Each of these areas is approximately 7 feet by 13 feet, or 91 square feet. We need these temporary areas to place our new electrical transformers that will power the park. The transformers were approved as part of our Phase 1 infrastructure permit, which is B13-1623. We submitted the CUP application on October 2nd for these temporary fence enclosures. That's over 90 days ago. We have been through DMT and we've been through DRSC. As discussed in our application, we do not believe the city has jurisdiction over the proposed plan. However, without waiving any of our rights, we submitted the application and we're going through the process. We need to make the decision where to place our transformers within the next 30 to 40 days. We have been informed by staff that we will be on the February 4th agenda. This is the last possible date to obtain approval from the Commission. The temporary fences will be removed when we get approval from the city and the Coastal Commission to construct the permanent wall that goes between the tracks and the park. That permit application, which we call Phase 2, was submitted to the city on November 20th. If the permanent wall is never built, we have provided financial assurances to the city that the temporary fence and transformers would be moved back to our side of the existing fence line. That's exactly where they're approved today under the permit that has already been granted. So if we don't build the wall, we're just moving right back no harm, no foul, right back where they've been approved. Since the fence locations are temporary, and we've offered to move the fences and the transfer back at a later date, and we have provided financial assurance to do this, this should be an easy approval for the Planning Commission. So when it comes before you on February 4th, I sure hope you approve it. I sent a couple examples of temporary fencing in the North Beach area, a couple of you today. They're everywhere and around North Beach. We didn't have to look too far. I think some of the differences is our fencing is going to match our existing fence. We're not going to have orange construction fencing. And we provide financial assurance to remove it if, in fact, we need to. So we're asking you to make sure that staff brings this forward on February 4th, and we're asking for a yes vote when you see that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Would staff or the city attorney like to comment on that? Okay. All right. Now, that brings us to special orders of business, which is appeal of building permit B14-1374, a request to appeal comments rendered by planning staff for a building permit to install a new double-wide mobile home in the Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park. And Amber Gregg will be bringing this matter to us.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Amber Gregg, project planner for this application. As Chair Darden just explained, this is an appeal of a building permit. A building permit is typically not something that we see here at the Planning Commission. So for the benefit of maybe you, but more importantly, the folks at home, why this appeal is before you, I thought I'd give a brief explanation as the types of permits planning does review. So planning typically reviews two types of permits, a discretionary permit and a ministerial permit. A discretionary permit are the permits that we review here during Planning Commission meetings. They're voted on, they're noticed, and we can imply conditions of approval on those to make sure there's no adverse negative impacts to surrounding property owners. Ministerial
We'll take a brief pause while we...
Oh, yeah, she makes it, okay.
You're a technical genius, Eileen. Sorry for the interruption, Amber.
No worries.
Please continue.
So ministerial permits are things that meet the code. Staff reviews them to make sure that they're consistent with codes, and if they are, we approve them. If we're not, we give comments or corrections to state what might need to change in order for them to comply with code. The municipal code addresses appeals for building permits and designates the Planning Commission as the Board of Appeals for such concerns. So that brings us to why we're here tonight. On August 21st of 2014, Eric Anderson submitted plans for a building permit to review a new mobile home to be installed at 1880 North El Camino Real in Space 22. The project is zoned open space, and the mobile home and the mobile home park are considered legal nonconforming uses. Staff reviewed the request, and planning provided corrections to the applicant on September 22nd, noting that the proposed mobile home did not comply with the city's municipal code at that time. Prior to the building permit application submitted by the applicant, though, staff had been working on a zone amendment to address this exact issue for nonconforming mobile home and mobile home park uses. This amendment was reviewed by the Planning Commission on November 19th of last year, and a unanimous recommendation of approval was forwarded to the City Council later in December, on December 16th, and that also received approval by the City Council. Last night at their January 6th meeting, it had its second reading, and after it is signed, typically within a couple days, it has a 30-day review period before it's finally enacted and adopted. The approval of the amendment, after it goes into law, would permit the proposed project pending California Coastal Commission approval and the completion of the building permit process. The applicant has been kept aware that the approval of this amendment would in fact allow the city to approve his building permit, and he understands the effects of that. In light of the approval, or the approved amendment that permits the replacement of the mobile home, staff recommends that the Planning Commission continue the appeal hearing until after the ordinance effective date, providing the applicant time to complete the building permit process and allow the ordinance to be effective, or to go into effect. This would allow the applicant time to obtain the desired permit and the ordinance to go into effect, coastal permits to be obtained, and the building permit process to be complete. That completes staff's recommendation, and staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Okay, before we ask the applicant to speak, are there any questions of staff? No, all right. Would the applicant like to come forward? And Eileen, you have Mr. Will's information, so you, okay.
Packed house tonight. All right. Dear Commissioners, my name is Eric Wills again. I am the owner through the Wills Revocable Living Trust of the mobile home located at Space 22 in the Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park. Our application is to replace a 55-year-old single-story 900-square-foot mobile home with a new 1,248-square-foot single-story manufactured home. The city staff denied this administrative permit because they felt additional square footage violated the city's nonconforming use ordinance. As discussed below and in the numerous documents provided to the city's ordinance, As discussed below and in the numerous documents provided to the city's ordinance, whether we are talking about the existing ordinance that's in place today or the new ordinance, which probably will be in effect in the next 30 days, doesn't matter for this application and doesn't matter for this appeal. And that's what we've been saying for the last year and a half or 2 years or 3 years. The proposed new manufactured home is exactly the same size, configuration, and structure as the new manufactured home that was recently approved by the city for space number 12. Further, number 22 is in full compliance with the Mobile Home Park Act and its regulations. We have completed all building permit requirements for space number 22. The only difference between the two applications is that the existing mobile home on space 12 was larger than the existing mobile home on space 22. Only difference. The result of staff's decision places an unfair, discriminatory, and illegal burden upon the residents in the park based upon the size of their pre-existing mobile home. Staff's denial was solely based on the city's nonconforming use ordinance. As you can see from the documents we included in our appeal, over 230 pages, the city's reliance on their nonconforming use ordinance is misplaced, is in direct violation of state law, and the staff's position contradicts with the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is called HCD, and this is the state agency responsible for all mobile home parks and manufactured housing in the state of California. HCD has specifically told the city of San Clemente, when this exact issue came up many years ago, that your ordinance doesn't matter. You need to follow mobile home law. We're a mobile home park. In HCD's March 26, 2009 letter, the question was asked, does the Mobile Home Parks Act, which we call MPA, preempt the city of San Clemente's? We're not even talking about a different city here. We're talking about San Clemente. Preempt the city of San Clemente's ordinance pertaining to nonconforming uses and structures when applied inside a mobile home park? Second question, specifically, does the MPA preempt the ordinance's prohibition on replacement of a single-story manufactured home with a larger two-story manufactured home inside the Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park? Now, I'm not talking about putting in a two-story. I'm just talking about adding about 300 square feet, but it's still on point. Their answer was yes. The city's ordinance is preempted by a combination of the MPA, Mobile Home Park Act, and the Manufactured Housing Act of 1980, because the MPA entirely occupies the field of the mobile home park construction, maintenance, use, and occupancy, including the nature of the structures that occupy spaces within a park. And the MHA, which is the Manufactured Housing Act, occupies the field of manufactured home construction standards, how the home's built. As a result, a local ordinance cannot be interpreted or applied to regulate the nature of the structure permitted to occupy spaces within a mobile home park, such as prohibiting a two-story home, or in my case, a larger single-story home. The entire HCD letter was included as part of this appeal. The city's ordinance related to Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park is preempted by MPA and MHA. There's no denying that the city has violated state law for many, many years to the detriment of my family and the residents of Capistrano Shores Mobile Home Park. The city, acting as the local enforcement agency for the state of California, because when you deal with Capistrano Shores, you're not acting as the city, you're acting as a local enforcement agency for the state of California, is required by statute to apply the standards contained in the Mobile Home Park Act. If those standards are met, then issuance of a permit is mandatory. Health and Safety Code 18207. By staff's own definition, this is a ministerial permit, not a discretionary permit. By your own definition, it's a ministerial permit. It should never come before you. As such, it must be approved, notwithstanding the city's current non-conforming use ordinance, tomorrow's non-conforming use ordinance, or something in the future. It has no bearing on this. Staff suggests that the Commission could either, 1, concur with the staff and continue the appeal hearing until after the ordinance effective date, providing the applicant time to complete the building permit process. Again, we've completed all the building items. There's no open items there. Or 2, the Commission could deny the appeal and the applicant could revise his plans to comply with the current zoning ordinance. So I assume that means I should go and try to get a 900 square foot mobile home. Or wait for the ordinance to become effective and reapply at a later date. Both of these options are inconsistent with state law, as the MPA and the MHA preempt the city ordinances. The third option, which staff did not suggest, is that the Commission could approve the appeal. This is the only lawful option for the Commission to take. I request approval of the ministerial permit to install the proposed manufactured home on Space 22. Also, a permit issued by the lead or local enforcement agency pursuant to the Mobile Home Park Act cannot be conditioned upon receipt of an approval or waiver from the California Coastal Commission. That's the second part of this process here. It is the responsibility of the mobile home owner to work with the Coastal Commission if a permit is required, but the city can't require it. It's up for the actual person putting in the mobile home to determine if, in fact, the Coastal Commission is a permit is required. I have confirmed with staff that in addition to the appeal and the documents related thereto, staff has previously provided the Commission at least 2 additional documents written by attorneys, the Lofton firm. One document was written to Mr. Nichols, Holloway, and Oderman, dated October 1st, 2014, and the other document was written to Ms. Gregg and Mr. Holloway on December 1st, 2014. For the record, I hereby incorporate those documents as though presented at this hearing. Please approve my application to replace an old, out-of-date mobile home with a new and safe manufactured home. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Are there any questions for Mr. Wells? Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. At this time, if there's anyone else who wishes to testify to this issue, please come forward. And, no, it's not a public hearing. That's Ajit had said that for this matter because it's a special order business.
Correct. It's not a public hearing in the traditional sense, but if anybody wants to testify, they can.
Seeing no one come forward, I invite discussion or perhaps a motion. Commissioner Brown?
If there's no discussion, I'll recommend that the Planning Commission, acting as the Board of Appeals, continue the appeal of building permit B-14-1374 to February 18th, 2015.
Is there a second? Okay, there's a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes 6-0. Thank you. That brings us to why do I have this as 8B? Remember, I got my book all out of order. So, so our first item is
The back divider, old business and new building.
yeah. So it is 9B. Okay. So it'd be let's see. I should have just done that, and I would have known where I was. I'm sorry. I packed my own book, and apparently I'm hopeless at any kind of administrative task, and so I have no idea what order we're in tonight. So this is item 8B, which is the North El Camino Real Class 1 Bicycle Path Project Landscaping Design. Tom, you're going to be reviewing this for us.
Yes. Good evening, Your Honorable Chair and Commissioners. My name's Tom Frank, and I'm your...
I want you to know nobody ever calls me honorable, so thank you.
You're welcome. I'm your Transportation Engineering Manager, and it's with pleasure to present the landscape and conceptual design for this really important project. This project was in front of you about a year ago and for your review. And at that meeting, you recommended to forward the item for approval to City Council, and you asked also to include as much landscaping as can be accommodated within the budget. And you also asked for an abundance of vertical landscaping if we could provide that opportunity. You asked that we apply new standards in the general plan, and you were asking council to increase the project funds to support creating a gateway as a part of the project. So in March of 2014, we brought the item to City Council, and they really listened to all of your recommendations. They approved the 60% complete project plans, and they fully funded the landscaping portion of the project so that we could landscape the entire median, the barrier median that separates the Class 1 facility from the travel lanes. So that's what I'm really presenting to you tonight is we have contracted with a landscape architect who completed the landscape architectural design for the beach trail. BGB, and Art Guy is our project manager, the president of the firm and the project manager on the project. He had he has completed the conceptual design, which is presented in attachment 1, and I'll go through that in my presentation. Unfortunately, the bad news is, although we would have liked to have included trees in that median area, we have an existing 24-inch sewer line which runs, it's like Murphy's Law, directly underneath that median, almost the entire length. So it really precludes us from putting any sort of a tree in that median area, just because we need to maintain access. Yeah.
That's our outfall from the sewer plant?
It's not our outfall, but it's a large gravity sewer for the area. So, yeah, the roots and the trees themselves, just for access to that sewer line, present it's not a good idea to plant trees over big sewer lines. So what I want to do is present the concepts to you and get your feedback, and hopefully we can get a recommendation to move forward to City Council. One other bit of information which affected the schedule, which was included in your agenda report, is we were hoping to get an exemption from the California Coastal Commission for a coastal development permit. We've been meeting with them, and unfortunately they determined that we do need a coastal development permit. So another challenging part of the project is we're coordinating with the frontage improvements that are a condition of the Marblehead Coastal property, which is well underway. And we just received revised improvement plans, so that we had asked them to revise their frontage improvements to create a separated walkway on the inland side of the road segment. So they accommodated that, and we just received revised plans on that. And in conversations with the developer, it looks like they're planning to move forward. We don't have a hard date, but they're looking to move forward with their frontage improvements sometime this spring. So this project, we need to coordinate with them. They actually have to go first before we complete our project. So what that means is I've adjusted the schedule slightly. We're looking to hopefully complete all of our permitting and approvals by April of this year, get Caltrans approval in June of this year, get City Council approval of the bid documents in July, and go into construction in fall. We were hoping if we didn't have the coastal development permit that we might be able to actually do it before summer, start before summer. With the coastal development permit, many times they'll condition it where they don't want the work done during the summer months. So that's kind of an adjustment to the schedule. But this is my highest priority project. I want to get this thing built as soon as possible. So, all right, so with that, I won't read this verbatim, but here's the philosophy, which is in your packet. Hopefully it was at a scale that you could actually read it. Did you actually get copies of the 11 by 17?
Yes, we did.
Okay, great. Okay. And I will give an overview of what the concepts are. And here's a little bit larger font. Essentially, as I mentioned, it's a continuation of the beach trail landscaping concepts. It's really to try and establish a gateway into our community. There's two segments. There's a segment between Camino Capistrano and Camino San Clemente that's along in front of the mobile home park there. And that landscaping palette includes grasses and succulents and rocks, and the grasses create kind of this swaying breeze, and I guess they're trying to emulate the the natural elements of the ocean and the breeze in that area. As you move towards the south, the landscaping palette will become more of a succulent and rock-based mix, and they'll be including more boulders and more succulents and just a different variety of plants. So that's kind of the overall concepts that Art was trying to establish with his conceptual design. Of course, you can read the philosophy. He words it much more eloquently than I can. So here's the...
Does the Coastal Commission have any requirements as to the types of species that we need to use in this sort of landscaping?
They'll be reviewing that, I'm sure.
I know they're reviewing it, but I was just curious if there are requirements that we're aware of that they've exercised on other projects.
They haven't. We're going to submit this with our development permit. They haven't seen this concept design yet. So I think they do, don't they, Jim? Normally they have recommendations on like natives and...
Typically, they're going to be looking for native plantings.
I would think you could just check with the contractor who designed it, because he also did the beach trail, and he
Right.
probably have a lot of
Exactly.
experience.
So I'm assuming that he's taken that into consideration
I'm
and
sure,
what he's
yeah.
recommended.
And he knows that we're going for a coastal
You mentioned
development.
this comment about the Coastal Commission doesn't like construction during the summer.
Right.
That because of
Beach
what?
access.
Beach access.
Beach
yeah,
access?
mainly.
Running and running, okay.
But we'll see. I mean, as I mentioned, we want to try and get this built as soon as possible. So here's an overall view of that road segment. And actually, the font's terrible, so I guess you really can't even see the different streets. But towards the left of the graphic, you can see Camino Capistrano and Camino San Clemente. And that's the first segment, which I mentioned, which would include the grasses. And then the area from Camino San Clemente down to Avenida Estacion is the second segment, which we'll review further in other graphics. Here's what they're calling the Ocean View segment, which is between Capistrano and San Clemente. And there's an elevation style or an artist rendering, which shows it much better for the audience, because it's very hard to decipher what this graphic actually is showing. And here's the other segment. And here's an overall view of the existing striping. You can see that's the yellow stripes that's basically an existing aerial. And then you have the overlay, which are the darker lines. That's the new striping. So you'll see that the stripe median is moving over about 10 feet towards the inland side. And then you can see the landscape median and the Class 1 pathway as well. And here's the graphics that are easier to actually see what's planned in the segments. This is, of course, in front of the mobile home park, Colony Cove. So you can see the grasses. One thing I did want to point out is we have to facilitate the drainage patterns for the roadway. So we will be including curb cuts through this median. And where it's flat, those curb cuts could be rather frequent, like up to 20-foot spacings. But if we have some longitudinal slope, like a half an inch, we will make those as long as we can. So we'll do the hydraulic calculations and figure out how long we can make those to try and
Jim,
beautify
did you have a question about that?
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify on this picture, you're showing us, you've kind of like mocked up, taken a picture of the
Yeah.
current thing and mocked it up. This would be one lane in either direction.
Yeah, the road
right?
striping. Try and ignore the striping. It does get confusing. Just try and look at the spatial aspects of it, like the trees or the eastern side curb line, and then the median, and then the ocean. But the striping is not relevant whatsoever. That's the existing striping. So that is really confusing.
I have a question, though, about that.
Sure.
Will there be additional bike lanes on PCH besides the ones that are on the upward side of the landscape?
Yes. Well, there are existing Class 2 striped bike lanes, and there will be Class 2 bike lanes on a segment. So it'll include the protected Class 1 and Class 2.
Okay.
And a bike for walking.
So effectively,
Yeah.
there's 4 lanes, two on the roadway and 2 in the...
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And where's the pedestrian walk in all
I can pull up the actual 90% design. We're at the 90% design level now, and I can show you the different alignments. But we're going to delineate a separate 5-foot area for pedestrians within that Class 1 area. So if you look on this graphic here, you see where that barrier is, the median. Towards the ocean, between that median and the guardrail, that's about 16 feet along a majority of that segment. And so within that 16 feet, 5 feet of it will be a pedestrian space, and that's like a normal width sidewalk. And then the remaining 11 feet will be the path, which is typically used by bicyclists and other, modes of travel like rollerbladers or people running with strollers. So we are designated an area for pedestrians. And especially in this area, if you know, at Camino Capistrano, there's an existing concrete walkway which the residents use to go down and get beach access at Poche. And we're going to continue along with that alignment, but it's just going to go down and be on the asphalt concrete, and it'll just be a delineated space. So following this brief presentation about the landscaping, I can show you the actual design drawings.
That's what I was going to suggest, because since he didn't have benefit of your earlier presentations, you might find that interesting, Michael, to see that.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about the actual transition of the crosswalk and pedestrian path to the downstairs walk.
Right.
The Poche catwalk there.
Sure, I can. There's actually a detail of that we can show you. Excuse me. So here's what they're calling a non-ocean view segment, and what you see here is more succulents, and we'll probably have more boulders in that area as well. And that existing K-rail will be removed.
And those boulders are going to match like the gravel and boulders we find for the train tracks.
Correct,
and water breaks and that sort of thing?
Right, yeah, it will match, yeah, they call it a rock mulch. That will be very similar to what's on the beach trail, and then the boulders will match that style of rock mulch.
And when we looked at this informally at design review, I think you said you were going to talk to the designer to see if it was possible to have some of those boulders be larger to give some of that sense of safety.
Absolutely, right.
Okay.
That is planned. So here's the plant palette, which he's selected, and I won't go into the details of it, but I'm sure you've reviewed it. One thing I did want to mention is as you know, the city is really focused on sustainability. And our operations folks, we have a new maintenance manager, and he was very concerned just about the level of planting which we're putting in here, and how much the different styles of, what the plant's growth rate is. So we're working with Art Guy to try and establish a plant palette and a design that's sustainable and on the lower maintenance side. And as an example, like birds of paradise, many people love them. I love them. I have them in my yard, but they do grow, and they actually grow rather large after a period of time. So if you try and maintain them in a really small form, you have to constantly be removing, a portion of the plant. And after 10 years or so, they can get up 5-6 feet and be really robust. So that's just one example whether that would be an appropriate plant for that small median space, because the median space is rather tight. It's like 3.5-4 feet.
Well, and maintenance is also an issue in that area because they'd have to shut down the lane in order to do the maintenance, right?
Exactly,
so it'd be
that's the other
inconvenient
issue. And in talking with our maintenance operation folks, they said that providing maintenance on the beach trail is really expensive, and it's very disruptive to the users, as you can imagine. So they thought that maintaining this median, they would actually do it from the travel lanes, the bike lane portion, the Class 2 portion of the roadway, and leave the Class 1 open. Originally, I thought that they'd want to be in the Class 1 area, but they think it's going to be pretty heavily traveled like the beach trail, and they'd actually provide their maintenance trucks and space in the bike lane area, the Class 2 area.
Wayne?
Tom, I want to be sure there are no trees at all in
Not in the median area.
We're not any trees at all. Okay.
Right.
I was concerned I started to think about it because in some areas trees really can obstruct the view of the ocean. And I know that that was brought up last night at the city council meeting with regard to the parking lot on North El Camino Real. And I just want to be sure that that there are no trees
Right.
in this at all.
There aren't. We were thinking of possibly over by the by Avenida Estacion, if there's some room off to the side where there's no utilities, because there's a lot of utilities in the ground. We might be able to plant a tree or two, but it would not block the ocean view. If you saw the segment names, he called it Ocean View area and non-ocean view. The ocean view between Capistrano and San Clemente, that's where there was never even any consideration of tree, because we didn't want to block any kind of ocean vista. But then we were looking, maybe we could put some sort of vertical, trees or something in a non-ocean view area because of the mobile homes which were there.
Right.
We thought that might be an opportunity, but it wasn't because of the existing utilities. But there are no trees, and we won't be blocking any ocean views. Yeah. So another design aspect that's included is to make it an extension of the beach trail is these low stone pilasters. And this one isn't really that low. This is at the beginning of the beach trail, but since considering the scale of our project and the width which we're working at, it would probably be about a half scale of what's shown here. And it would include a mosaic of some kind, which would be for us to discuss, saying something like maybe, I'm not sure what it'd say. I'm an engineer, so I don't have to think of those things. But he'll come up with a good suggestion, I'm sure.
You're more into the hydraulic calculation.
There you go, right. That's what excites me. So this is he's planning, or in his design, he has a pilaster included at the beginning or the endpoints of the median. So that's my brief presentation, and with that, hopefully you can provide your recommendation and move the project to City Council.
Are there more questions of Tom?
No, I think it's great.
Okay, let's open the public hearing. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
And we have one card, and that's from Brenda Miller. Brenda?
Build it. That's the short. This is really going to set the standard. So we need to be mindful that we don't want to create anything that would give people reason elsewhere to say we shouldn't do what San Clemente did. We want people to say, do what San Clemente does. And this project is going to set the standard for Orange County and points north. There's nothing like it. The only suggestion that I have is with regard to the plant palette, and I raised this with Tom by email, nothing with thorns. So those aloes with the thorns, those are going to be safety hazards for bicyclists who could scrape their legs, or little kids who could reach down and touch them, or somebody goes by on a skateboard and their legs get nicked, something like that. So I don't think that anything with thorns is a good idea. Those beautiful soft tip agaves, the grasses are gorgeous. Maybe society garlic, although I think perhaps that has too high a water requirement. But something on that order is probably the better choice to make. But other than that, every time I look at these renderings, I'm just thinking, wow, this is a great project, great first step. We're all going to be so proud that we really aimed for the brass ring, to date myself a little bit with merry-go-rounds. So let's really go forward. I'm just so excited. I cannot wait. The only thing I'm unhappy about is that we have to wait for the coastal development permit. I was really looking forward to the end of the summer, and maybe it would be done, but I'll wait because I think it's going to be wonderful. I can't wait to get the council on bikes. We can rent bikes, and Wayne, you too. You can bring your new kitty. We can rent bikes at Pete's.
You could put him in Foxy's basket.
Oh, he probably outweighs Foxy.
Well, I'm sure he outweighs Foxy, but you're strong.
Have a double and all pedal it down.
Okay, that's a good deal. So we all, on the maiden voyage, the ribbon cutting, we're all going to be on bikes, and we're all going to ride it. And the connection here is going to take us from Calafia via the beach trail through the North Beach parking lot, pick up our classiest Class 1 ever. It's going to go all the way to Palisades, cross over the railroad tracks, through the Doheny Beach parking lot. Then you can pick up the San Juan Creek Class 1 and go all the way to the Los Rios district, and pick up Amtrak there or have lunch and enjoy San Juan Capistrano and its beautiful rustic environment. Take the kids to the petting zoo, 10 miles, car-free, 20 miles round trip. There's nothing better. So let's do it. And thanks to Tom.
Thank you, Brenda. Larry? Will you fill out a card for Eileen when you're done?
Yes, I will
Thank
do
you.
that. I forgot my pen tonight, but I'll find one and do that.
Okay.
A couple of quick questions. Those little pass-throughs, they go across the median for water drainage. Could those be permeable, so that instead of sheeting the water off to wherever, that it could actually go into the ground, help feed those succulents? It seemed to me that might be a good idea. Also, I was curious: is there irrigation in that middle part? I was also concerned about the surface. I hope it's going to be a real smooth asphalt that we ride on. I mean, I do a lot of tricycling with my hand cycle, and I really appreciate a road that's smooth rather than one that's got big gravel where you're really bumping. And I'm glad that you're taking note of that the plants are going to be low maintenance. It was one of the things I wanted to mention tonight, that I've got a lot of succulents and California natives, and some of them just grow like crazy, and some of them are wicked sharp. So I'm glad to see that you're tuning in on that. Sounds like it's going to be a great project. Look forward to having it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Tom, would you come up and address some of those questions? People at home are probably wondering about those as well.
Okay, yeah, and also I can pull up the design drawings and show you the actual layout of the lane alignments. So regarding the thorns, I'll pass along that comment. Well, actually, I'll take your direction on that, but I will discuss that with Art Guy, the landscape architect, and it's definitely an understandable concern. The only comment on that is we do have similar types of landscaping along the beach trail, and there are some in other areas, but we can always strive to do better, so I understand the comment. Regarding the impervious and having the water flow, we thought of that, and we'd actually like to do that. Unfortunately, the soil, the subgrade through there is pretty unpermeable. And the other thing is, in that area, there's still the bluff, the unprotected bluff, so that roadway actually does get quite a bit of sediment runoff. So the Public Works personnel were concerned about having just an open, impervious area. So it's planned to have that as paved culvert crossings, essentially. But we did think of that, and that's what we were shooting for originally. And then the next question regarding the smooth surface. It is going to be smooth. We're going to actually grind down and do a completely new asphalt, smooth asphalt overlay, so it'll be as smooth as any of our newly smooth, like, I know this is engineering terms, but half-inch mix, so it's the finer mix, so it'll be very smooth to ride on. And we're going to level it. We're going to make it so it's an ADA accessible pathway, so we're going to level it to 1.5% fall, so it's very comfortable to ride on and walk on or do whatever you're doing on that pathway.
Tom, Don has a question.
Is this going to be the rubberized type asphalt like we use on some of our roads?
We're saying it's going to be for the benefits of what rubberized offers. But we're also looking at again the sustainability and the long-term basically how well it would endure in that situation. So we haven't made our final decision on that, but we're leaning towards the rubberized.
Michael, did you have an additional question?
Yeah,
you want to wait till he's
I
answering these?
have a question for Tom since you're back up. I'm really thrilled to see that there's a paragraph in here regarding the signage as part of this project, because I think that there's some signage that is definitely necessary at the connections of pedestrian paths and bike paths. And so I have a couple of questions. One, I don't know what CJPIA means. What does that mean?
That's the Joint Powers Insurance Association. That's the city's insurers.
So they're going to work with you on the signage?
Right. We've met with them, and we're going to come up with some wayfind signage and direct the users accordingly. And we've also looked at other MUTCD signing to make as clear as possible the options which the users or the riders have regarding like the Class 1 and the Class 2, and then also the pedestrian concerns which you had mentioned.
Yeah. Are we going to be able to take a look at that signage somewhere along the path of this project?
We weren't planning to come back to the Planning Commission. We're ready to go. Hopefully, the next step is to City Council for approval of approval of the improvement plans and then award. So
I'm kind of uncomfortable with that because I'm very, very concerned about the crosswalk at Camino Capistrano and this bike path with some of the conflicts that have happened in the past. I'd sure like to see what's going to be being proposed there.
We might be able to talk through that tonight if you're interested in talking through that.
I don't necessarily want to sidetrack the whole thing, but the biggest concern I have about this project is that signage and that crossing and all of that interface, because it's extremely dangerous. People have gotten hurt there. Could even get worse with this improvement, which I don't want to see happen. And in my neighborhood, the people are really, really concerned about what's going to be done to control the bikers from slowing down when people are crossing the street there to go to Pochi.
Well, I'm here to, excuse me, I'm here to serve, so maybe we could approach it where if you call me, I'd be happy to review it with you individually, or if you want me to bring it back to the full commission, I'm happy to do that as well.
As far as the
signage and
the signage
particular
issue,
focus to the...
Is there a reason the signage isn't going to design review? Typically it would it not?
I'll let Jim chime in on that.
It depends on what they decide to do. I'm not really sure if we've actually gotten that far, right? But we do have an approved wayfinding sign program that if they were to use the same signage, then it wouldn't require
Then it wouldn't need to,
any
because we already
additional
know what it
review.
would be.
So as long as they comply with the guidelines of that. Then there's other issues which are out of the design, the wayfinding realm, which are safety signage.
Right.
Which is usually dictated more
Like
by
METCD
state
signs,
requirements
right.
and things
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
Yeah, this is probably more in line with the safety requirements. That's really what I'm concerned with there.
Right. So our signage, which we're proposing, is in conformance with METCD, which is the national sign guidelines, and which is adopted by the state and all the cities in California.
Well, and that's something that if Michael wanted to look at that, he could meet with you and do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Tom, as long as I can do that with
Sure.
you, I'm very concerned about very small little pieces of this project, but I think they're very important ones.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and if it sets your mind at ease to some degree, we discussed at length when we looked at this originally the various intersections and the interfaces between the pedestrians, the cyclists, and the vehicles. So you're right to want to look at those issues carefully.
Yeah, there has been a lot of discussion on those topics. So.
Yeah, just to point out, get with Tom on that, because when we went through this iteration the first time, Petal was here, others, the Bicycle Coalition, Pete and I, and that intersection would be in a transition from the barricade from Dana Point. We debated quite extensively. I think we segmented it and placed where these things divide to allow time for the riders to choose the path they need to go on, such as the Class 2 path for the expert rider, the Class 1 for the ones that are slower, and how those segments in time and the sign, all that intersection where you're showing concern. And since you're new to the commission, we spent a lot of time on, but you need to get up to speed and get with Tom on that, I think, because there was a lot of consideration given to it.
Yeah.
And I know Brenda had input, and so did Pete. So to allow all those various things to happen at that intersection. Yeah.
I think you'll be pleased with what you learn when you meet with Tom. Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. In terms of wayfinding, I got a couple questions. Going north from the beach trail, do we have any planned signage to route people from the trailhead at North Beach up to the new ECR bike trail and ped path?
Yes, that was one of the comments from the CJPIA representative, was to make sure that people knew, how to get to this path.
Okay.
That was there.
And what about the other way, going south? Because it's a little, really, I guess my bigger question is it can as much as I want to encourage people to use this, it's a great project. I'm wondering how traffic coming south on ECR on the bike trail will then potentially increase bike traffic on the beach trail, and how that might impact the overall use of the beach trail. Has there been any consideration to that?
There has been, and I know we reviewed the plans a little bit more in detail at design review level. That's where we're on the south end, and I know last time I brought it back, even in conceptual design, we talked about doing the shared use plaza area, and we're actually on the south end in front of the bike shop. We're going to be transitioning to a paver, basically shared use path, a really wide, a 13-foot wide pathway, and then it transitions to the intersection, and the users of the bicyclists are going to need to use the intersection access ramps or go around the bike shop where there's another pedestrian access ramp and over by the railroad and use that crosswalk. So they're physically going to have to slow down. There's going to be a physical change in the characteristics of the pathway, so it's obvious. It's going to be very obvious that the pathway is ending and changing.
And Mike, that's good.
And then,
but I'm thinking of increased bicycle traffic on the beach trail and how much more there might be as a result of the popularity of.
Right.
what we're
Well, I'd
putting
say,
in.
yeah, it's going to increase for certain because the whole area is going to get increased bike use and other user use, like strollers and people running and everything else. So there will be an increase in use. That's definite. As far as we also have another project which we're working on right now, which is the Pacific Coast Bike Route signage and parking improvements. And so we're looking at the wayfind signing and additional bike route signing as a part of that project. So there'll be signing to do it, but as far as the increased use and any issues associated with it, it's just we haven't really analyzed that, except for it's going to be more crowded. It's going to get more use.
Okay, so, but we might have some signage to help take the people who are a little more power riders, so to speak, to say, hey, this is where the coast route is.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, I was
and if
missing
you're just
your
a
point.
casual biker with,
so
full family, they
we'll
can
make
go
sure
on.
that the bike route is well signed.
Okay.
Okay.
I hear you, Tom.
So back to the issue at hand. We've kind of gotten you off track. There was one more question, I think, that had come up, and that was about irrigation.
Oh, excuse me for not answering that. Yes, it is
Well, we got
going
you
to be
on track.
irrigated, right? Yeah. No, I had that listed. So yes, there will be irrigation to water but they will be low water use plants.
And I think to Larry's concern about the maintenance, that was an issue that we discussed quite a bit in design review, as to whether they not just was it. I know you have your concerns about maintenance as far as the level of maintenance, but we had concerns about how the maintenance would impact the aesthetics, and particularly of the grasses and some of the others. And you assured us that Mr. Guy had taken all that into consideration in his species selection.
Right. Correct.
So. Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Welcome.
Do we have a motion, or is there a need for further discussion?
I just think it's a terrific project. I think we've really laid this thing out. I'm with Tom. We want to get this thing built. And maybe the Coastal Commission will rush this thing through. I don't know what their normal span times are. We have Commissioner Eagleson would be more than willing to lend his help to go up there and talk to him for you.
Thank you.
And
He can be very persuasive.
but anyway, I just think it's great. So
Well, if there's no more discussion, I'd like to move the recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward to the City Council a recommendation to approve the landscape conceptual design for project provided in Attachment 1.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Passes 6-0. Okay, so that takes us to item 10A. 10A. I'm sorry. The downtown license plate survey. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Darden, Commissioners. Tonight we're continuing our discussion from the December 3rd Planning Commission meeting about the license plate survey. And I want to mention that I do have Catherine Moran here in the audience. She was our intern extraordinaire who actually went out and did a lot of the survey work and prepared many of the graphics, pretty much all the graphics actually, that you see before you. So I wanted to personally thank Catherine for all of her hard work, and we appreciate everything that she's done.
Good job.
So as I mentioned, we're continuing our discussion, and just a brief little outline. Just a couple of slides. I want to just do a refresher of the parking survey. 4 slides, I promise. It'll be very short. And then there was some information that the Planning Commission requested that we provide some new information. So I'll go into what that information is. It's included within your staff report. And then lastly, we'll ask that the Planning Commission make recommendations on the recommendations contained within the report and the survey. So in our previous meeting, we went into we discussed at length various parking management strategies that are available to communities, and I won't go into what those are, but we did talk about that. We did a refresher on the 2013 occupancy counts and what those revealed, and then we went into great detail the findings of the 2014 license plate survey. And then we touched upon the recommendations, but at that point, I think it was 10 p.m., and the Commission decided to continue the item until this evening. So the major findings of the survey is that we found there's times when the on-street and off-street public parking occupancy exceeds the 85% on-street and the 90% off-street peak parking thresholds. Those are the thresholds at which, beyond those percentages, you have circulation issues, and it impacts, you have traffic basically in the downtown area as people are circling trying to find available parking space. There were a few times that we noticed occupancies above those thresholds in the downtown. That occurred in August of 2014 as well as 2013. That was during the peak parking demand times of 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. So during those times, the only parking that was available to customers that came to the downtown area were within the private parking lots. And those were at an occupancy about 50% during that 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. times. The survey for the looking at long-term parkings revealed that there were a couple areas where people were overstaying the posted time limits, and those areas are highlighted in blue and include the 100 block of Avenida Granada on the north side, the 200 block of Del Mar on the south side, and Lot A, Lot 6A, and Lot 7C.
Wayne, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. On the 200 block of Avenida Del Mar, the 3-hour limit does not extend throughout the entire block there, by the way, but it's indicated that it is. The 3-hour limit, as I remember, starts at the very beginning of South Ola Vista and extends down to right in front of Cafe Mimoso.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but beyond that, it's not a 3-hour limit.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that that's...
That is an excellent point. So some of the data that's showing long-term parkers on that stretch of Del Mar is a little misleading in a sense.
Okay. And I know we're not talking about it right now, but I wanted to be sure to determine that the parking lot behind Nick's is in fact a public parking lot and not a private parking lot.
Yes, indeed, it is a public parking lot.
Okay, because the charts here show it as a public parking lot. So I just want to be sure that that's corrected and before it goes to City Council.
You're talking about 12F, is that correct? My laser pointer's not working.
I don't think that is where Nick's is. I think it's down here farther. Could be C or B.
Well, and that might just be a error graphical representation.
Yeah.
We'll fix
so I think that needs to be corrected there. But that was a major point when Nick's went in there, that it became a public parking lot and not a private parking lot.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. The other major findings that we found with regards to the survey was that the long-term parkers were really being concentrated in a specific area, and that's off of Avenida Cabrillo. And you can see in this figure, I circled that area in Cabrillo on the north and south side, as well as the all-day public lots on either side of Cabrillo. That's where we found that the long-term parkers were parking legally. So at the last meeting, the Commission asked for some information to help them with regards to making some recommendations on the recommendations contained within the report. And one of the items was a clear graphic depicting where the long-term parkers are parking in the downtown core. And I actually just gave you a sneak peek of that one, and I'll show that again in a second. The other thing was to understand how residential parking permits work within the downtown core, the number issued and how those work. And I'll go into some detail about how those work as well. And then lastly was to have the survey recommendations be numbered and broken into short and long-term recommendations. So this is the graphic we just looked at that shows where the long-term parkers are parking in the downtown core. You can see on Avenida Cabrillo, within the all-day public parking lots, Lot 8A had 25 cars staying 5 hours or more. Lot 7A had 27 cars staying 5 hours or more. And on the 100 block of Cabrillo on the north side, there were 17 cars staying 5 hours or more. And the south side also had 17 cars that were staying 5 hours or more.
Cliff, I have a question, and I'm not sure. You can look at either this graphic or the other one. Isn't 11D also an all-day lot? Because it's on your graphic, it's figure 1 in the survey.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the library parking lot?
Yes, I believe the library lot is also all day.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll come back to that later when we're in questions. Thank you.
And so the city does have 4 lots where residents of the downtown can park overnight if they don't have a parking space that's already allotted for them in the property they own or lease. And non-residents can also park within these lots. And this is with a standard city parking permit. Within those 4 lots, there's 90 spaces, and we tried to determine how many residents are actually utilizing those 4 lots. So the first thing that we did was we figured out how many parking permits were issued in 2014 to residents on the streets of the 100 block of Avenida Cabrillo, 100 block of Avenida Del Mar, and 100 block of Avenida Granada, and there were 29 that we found. Then we wanted to find out, well, how many people are actually utilizing those lots. So we did a just real quick survey on a Tuesday morning, 5:15 a.m., very early.
Who got that job?
That was me. I took that one. I live in town, so.
One for the giver.
And we found that there was 15 cars with permits and 3 without. So about a 20% occupancy.
Wayne?
Thank you. Also, I understand the city issues permits to various employees of businesses, such as Duke's, for example, so that they can park behind in the city parking lot, and they would, if they would exceed 3 hours. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so that the reason why we do that is that those are actually lots that are privately owned but city leased for public parking.
Right.
And in return for a private property owner making that lot open to the public, we do give them employee passes so their employees could overstay those time limits of 3 hours.
Do we know how many we've issued, of those that we issued?
Yes, we do have that information for each individual lot. And that actually is within the revised report.
Okay.
We included that information. So on to the recommendations. Staff is recommending that the commission recommend the following to the City Council. and that is to implement the short and long-term recommendations that address the long-term parkers, recommendations 1 through 10, and I do have those on the following slides if we want to go over each one. Second would be to continue the current parking management strategies that we've been doing for some time now. That's recommendations 11 through 16. And then lastly, recommendations 17 through 23 should be considered in conjunction with a comprehensive parking and circulation strategy for the downtown. That is one of the implementation measures identified at the general plan, is to perform a comprehensive parking and circulation strategy.
Question? I'm looking at item number 17, recommendation number 17. Consider installation of bicycle parking within the downtown core. Right now, this implementation measure, was it a red, yellow, or green item in our implementation measures? Does anyone remember? I know I'm asking a hard question, but
I don't know.
no, I'm actually talking about 17.
The bicycle plan?
Yeah, because here's my concern, that I like these recommendations, but we're looking at this one, this group of ones. It seems to be, something that is, it's going to be approved by the city council. There's like a lot of sort of overhead and work, and it's going to be time before we get to these. But bicycle parking in the downtown core seems like something we could do fairly quickly. We can take one parking spot and create a bicycle corral out of it. So I'm tending to think that maybe that should go perhaps into a short-term recommendation.
And we could include that within a short-term recommendation. That's actually Tom Frank's group is looking at bicycle parking, providing bicycle parking in the downtown area right now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, didn't we get a grant? We got a grant for that, but there was some issue with that. Isn't that right, Jim?
We do have a grant money for it, but we're having some issues with the funding agency requiring certain kinds of technical studies that almost make the grant not worth the money because the studies are costing as much as the grant. But we are looking into that, and also, just as a matter of project review, that's also something in the new general plan that we consider bicycle parking with all new development. So as new projects come in, we'll be investigating that for them to help meet their parking requirements or add as an addition to their parking requirements for the projects.
Okay. Well, this started off to be a question. I apologize. It turned into a comment about it. But when we get into our discussion, maybe that's something to consider. As what we want to do with 17. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Wayne.
That's okay. I like to go over the short-term recommendations here. And perhaps I'm reading this wrong here, but under number 2, it says enforce the no parking between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the all-day public parking lots off Gabriel 8A and 7A to ensure residents or other long-term parkers are not monopolizing use of these lots. And perhaps I'm reading this wrong, but then it goes down to number 5, where it says to allow residents to park overnight between the hours of 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. in lot number 7A. But so on one hand, it says enforce the no parking between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., but yet on the other it says they can park there from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. Am I reading that wrong?
I think I'd like to just add to number 2, folks without permit would, of course, be that's where the enforcement would occur. So those without a permit parking within the lot would be cited, and then 5 would be with permit. And I should probably add that language into the.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that language. It is covered in your attachment 3, but as far as what the current regulations are. But I think it would probably be a good idea to call it out.
And if, in fact, they're allowed to park overnight, how are these lots cleaned? I've noticed, for example, on the lot behind, on the one on Granada, that it's really, really dirty. So if we allow people to park overnight in these lots, how do we clean them then? Are they done manually, or are they done by machine, or how are they cleaned?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer, but I can find out.
Okay. That's really important because in the lot behind, in the Granada lot, we find, and I'm just going to say it, we find beer bottles, we find syringes, we find litter, and it's a common problem in that particular lot. And I've made note of that before to the city, and unfortunately, the litter is still there. And so it needs to be cleaned up. And that's probably for other lots, including the ones on Cabrillo also. But the ones that are near the bars seem to have a lot more litter. But if someone parks there overnight, how do we clean it? Also, number 3 here, to encourage downtown restaurant employees to park at the public fire station senior center lot 4C on weekends and weekdays after 5 p.m. What type of lighting is provided for that? Because we're going to find that a lot of the employees would probably feel unsafe parking in lots that do not have adequate lighting. So that's something to take into consideration also. I do like your number 4 here, increase the circulation of the public parking brochure. I think that's essential, and I'm disappointed that we don't have representatives here tonight from the Downtown Business Association. Were they advised of this meeting by any chance?
Yes.
They were. All right, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Don, go
It's a
ahead.
question, Cliff. We're 5 and 6, kind of say the same thing in a way. In other words, Cabrillo all-day parking lot, Avenue to 7A to 3 hours. Then we repeat it again in the long term with 7A and 8A. Some reason why we repeated that twice?
Yeah, so
Could you
looking at
email that on
number
that?
5, so you have just 7A is one of the short-term recommendations, so that would be the lot that's closer to Del Mar. I've converted that to 3 hour, and then we could kind of evaluate the impacts of that change. And the long-term recommendation would be to do the second lot, both.
It's contingent.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned 7A in both paragraphs, so it's short-term and long-term in my briefing. So I was like, is there...
Oh, I see.
So there's a...
So you're wondering why it doesn't say just 8A?
Yeah. And going forward to council...
You see?
Yeah, I do see that. We can eliminate the 7A because it's addressed in the short term. It's it's one of those things where if they don't do it in the short term, then in the long term we want to make sure we do it. So, but we can always look at the short term recommendation.
I like the short-term recommendation, but you have it also as a long-term in 6. I was going to recommend you just eliminate it out of...
We could just strike it.
Strike it out of 6 and say, council, when you approve it, we're going to public notice and we're going to test the waters with this lot, and I think that's the way to do it. Just clarify the briefing.
Cliff, on number 3, I drove by there tonight because I couldn't remember how big that lot was, and it's not. I couldn't find it in the report as far as the fire station lot. So one recommendation to you would be to make sure to include that information for City Council. But I wondered...
just the number of parking spaces. And
yeah,
the
and I think it's about
limitation.
20 without considering the ADA spaces.
Yeah, it's 25.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I was a little bit concerned about that, and I wondered if you'd thought about the capacity for that. If you're recommending that the employees park there, I know that some employees have on-site parking for some of the restaurants, but 25 spaces wouldn't accommodate all the employees. So what was your thinking, and what was the reasoning behind that?
It's just an underutilized lot after 5 p.m. that can be better utilized.
So So you're thinking in the short term, we are maintaining some lots where they can park long-term, so you think that they'll still have adequate parking for them. And then once you move to your recommendations where you're beginning to eliminate more lots, those are contingent on finding additional parking for them?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're not expecting that fire station to be a panacea for the employee parking?
No, definitely not.
The other thing that we could maybe consider, and Cliff, perhaps this is what you mean, is as new restaurants come in, say, or convert, like the Shore, for instance, which is out of business now, and a new restaurant will be coming in there. If they need to have a requirement to meet certain parking standards, we could maybe devise some kind of a condition of approval that asks them to provide some shuttle for their employees from that lot to deal with the safety and the lighting concern, and then for it to actually be utilized.
It's an interesting thought. I also had a question. This comes up a couple of different places where you talk about the residents' hours for the overnight parking being 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. I thought I observed two things. One is, if I were a resident, I would have difficulty running out at night and moving my car at 9 p.m., so that I was in a lot where I could park overnight, because I'm in my pajamas at that hour. But then I also thought about the fact that since those lots have 3-hour parking, they can effectively go there at 6 p.m., I beg your pardon, and not have to move before the 9 p.m. Hour struck. Wouldn't it just make more sense to give them the ability to park there between 6 p.m. and 9 a.m. and just basically, codify that rather than having them have to, cobble that equation together?
Yeah, you could, but then again, they could park there 3 hours before 6 p.m., so they'd be parking there even earlier. We just thought that we just noticed that after 9 p.m. there really isn't that there's ample parking in the downtown area, and 9 p.m. seemed reasonable, but we can put it to an earlier hour.
That might be something we want to discuss when we get to discussion. Michael, you had questions about the short-term recommendations?
I'm surprised by my observation of this chart. What really surprises me is that Lot 6A and Del Mar, west of Ola Vista, are 3-hour parking areas currently, and yet they're shown as where looks like employees or somebody parking there for at least 5 hours. So that seems to be a real huge enforcement issue that I find surprising, that people would park all day long. If I got my blue code right, on Del Mar, west of Ola Vista.
Yeah, so Wayne brought this up earlier, and part of Del Mar there, if I'm understanding your concern, the 200 block on the south side of Avenue Del Mar, a portion of it is actually, you can actually park there more than the 2-hour posted time limit.
3 hours.
That is on the rest of the, on Del Mar.
How much longer than that? All day? Or?
Yes, you can park there
All day, from the north to south.
So it is a bit misleading.
Okay, well, it just sort of jumps out as, kind of quick fix. Maybe that graphic should be fine-tuned a little bit, but quick fixes on the problem here with just enforcement. The other question I have is when do you think you would shift gears into long-term solution, specifically Lot 8A and the south side of Cabrillo? There's certainly a lot of full-day, all-day parking going on there. And when would that kick in? Why wouldn't that be sooner? Is there, what's the threshold? I mean,
Well, the thought is it's contingent upon finding employee parking further out within the downtown area. So once additional parking could be found, then we could implement converting that lot 8A to from all day to 3-hour parking, knowing that there is plenty of parking for employees further out of the downtown core.
Okay, so with that rationale, then you're saying that taking lot making lot 7A to 3 hours in the short term, that you don't see that as being a disruptive to that process, that employees can live with that as being taken away from them as a parking area?
That's what we anticipate. We're trying to free up the parking supply close to the downtown core, so that way shoppers and visitors have a place to park. So we're looking to do it incrementally, just small steps over time.
So you're basing that on some kind of a count, or I'm just wondering how you come up with that analysis that it's okay to do 7A but not 8A. Do you have some statistics that you're looking at that if you close that off and make that 3 hour, then employees aren't going to park there anymore theoretically? And you're saying that'll be okay? That won't be a burden for them?
Well, we do know that along Avenida Cabrillo on both sides of the street that we have cars that are staying 5 hours or more. 40% or so of people are staying 5 hours or more, and so and we know that there is a bit of capacity there on Cabrillo as well to accommodate. So we're basically just shifting employees a little further onto Cabrillo.
But you're also saying it's okay to make 7A restrictive in the short term, restricted 3-hour parking?
Yes. In the short term.
And you're comfortable with that won't be a problem with the employees?
Yeah, it's 27 spaces.
How much for long-term parkers?
In that lot,
17. No,
I don't know offhand.
I see 27. I'm just, that'll be a lot of parking that disappears right away where people are parking all day long.
And this is a parking management strategy. This is something that is a way to manage parking. We're trying to basically free up parking in the downtown core.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that, how did you come to the determination that it's okay to do 7A in the short term?
Well, 7A is the closest to the downtown core, and there is excess capacity on Cabrillo and in some of the adjacent side streets.
You know, this 7A here, if I'm not mistaken, there's a Paseo that you can go right through to Del Mar on that.
That's correct.
And so that is a very important parking lot for customers to park in, because it has direct access to Avenue Del Mar shops, and it really should not be used for a long-term parking at all. It needs to be short-term parking, because that is a prime parking spot on Avenida Cabrillo for customers.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that too, Wayne. I'm just wondering,
I think
when you make a short-term change,
I think anecdotally,
that?
I think that we feel that the displacement of the 17 long-term parkers in that lot, or whatever the correct number is, with the existing capacity of the street on Cabrillo and the other lots, can accommodate the long-term parkers. Long-term parkers are going to get there before the customers get there, because they don't get there till 10, and it doesn't peak till 1 p.m. So they have the opportunity to park in the other places and there's plenty of room to accommodate those 17 long-term parkers and the rest of them. So I don't think we're creating a situation, Michael, where we're saying, okay, we're closing lot 7A from long-term parkers and there's nowhere for them to go. We're just displacing them to Cabrillo and the other lot. There's plenty of room, because they'll be there before the lion's share of the other parkers get there.
Yeah,
So I don't think it's
I'm
an
not
issue.
disagreeing with the strategy, because I agree with Wayne, that's a critical place for people to park.
But you're asking statistically,
I'm just wondering how
is
you
all
know
the
the
numbers,
basis.
do the numbers compute? And I think they do easily.
So you have some sense of the numbers that won't, I mean, you don't mind closing 7A, but you don't want to close 8A now as short term, right?
Well, because I think then at that point, you're taking away a significant amount of long-term parking and leaving no place for the employees, or a limited amount of places for the
Okay,
employees.
so these particular recommendations are based on some mathematical equation that, okay, that's really my question, how you get there.
Cliff, going back to 11D, was there a reason that you didn't consider, or I'm sure there was a reason, that you didn't consider changing 11D at some point to a shorter-term lot? Because it has no restrictions, is that correct? It doesn't even
So
have
11D, the community center lot.
the library lot.
Yes, library
Oh,
lot.
I'm sorry, I guess you would call it the community center lot, too.
Let me just verify 11D.
Because I have on your,
Yes,
on your table one.
there is no time limit for 11D.
Yeah, is there a reason that you didn't consider changing the times there? Like perhaps to Wayne's point, 7A is, is very close for shoppers, and D is further away, so moves people further away from some of the core area.
Well, we found there's actually fewer employees parking within that lot. So that's...
But you'd prefer them, like if we're looking at it strategically, you'd prefer to move people there from, say, 7A. So if the employees are looking for someplace to park, that's probably someplace that they'll park.
It's another opportunity site for them because it's all day parking.
And because the survey didn't show the long-term parkers actually parking there, we didn't actually consider it, but it could be something if you wanted to recommend that as another opportunity for the 200 block to create that. Or that parking lot's big enough, you could even potentially segment, the one pass-through area is the 3-hour, and maybe have the long-term in the other portion. Because I know we have some employees, with community center and the library.
Yeah, I mean, to Michael's point, we do have to have some place for them to go, so I was assuming that you were thinking that they would be using that lot as...
But their utilization of that lot is in the high 90% all the way across when you look at the next peak hour percentage, 11, 94, 96, 98. That lot's ferociously fought for every time I'm down there. And Eileen and I fight for it every time we have a meeting over there. So, and then you have about 10 slots that are reserved for library personnel. So you have to subtract from that.
So I'm just trying to figure out why, if you are trying to move people to that lot, I was curious for the reasons that Don's just mentioned, because it does always seem to be crowded. But if you're not trying to move them there, I just wondered why you didn't consider that lot rather than one of the others for having reduced hours.
Well, I think just anecdotally that the lion's share of the impact is on the 100 block still.
Yeah, it is.
So that's why we focused on the 7A location, and I actually don't think it's quite really a shift, like they're going to go to the lot down there. What I think is that, as I explained earlier, long-term parkers get there earlier. They're the ones that are arriving at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and they're parking there all day because they're employees. And so those other places that they would be competing for, no one else is there yet. So they have their pick of where they can park. So they're going to park where they're allowed to park for the long term. So they're not competing. It's still, if 900 people park there a day, they're employees and customers, 900 people are going to park there either way. It's just where they end up.
shifting it around.
It's just shifting it around. So we don't need to create more spaces for the long-term parkers. We're just telling them where they can and cannot park. There's plenty of capacity. There's less employees than there are parking spaces in the places that are still open to them long-term.
But, I mean, in reality, some of them, I mean, obviously, you said they're going to go to Cabrillo because there's excess capacity there, right? And if there's not enough capacity there, they're going to go to the other all-day lots, which obviously includes 8A, and you're anticipating that. But I was just, some of them, the people who are at who are working at the lower end of the 100 block, or obviously people who are working in the 200 block, are going to go to lot 11D, right? Go ahead.
I think I'm kind of the point I would like to make is 7A is a good first choice, and I think staff's made a good one because of and the issues that Wayne brought up about the paseo for the customers. But I think you also bring up a good point about the library lot, that we should consider that to be a 2 or 3 hour limitation on it, because we're going to shift people down there all day. It's kind of a turnover lot now, but I think the unintended consequence of 7A, which I think is a good choice, is they might drift down to 11D, the library lot, which is very heavily contested now. Well, I think we should consider limiting the hours in that lot, other than for the one signed for the librarians and staff that work there.
The library lot is congested for a number of reasons. Number one, residents in the area park there overnight, and sometimes they don't move during the day. That's number one. Number two, we have 12 city parking spaces reserved for city vehicles there. That needs to be reevaluated once again. Because when I go down there and during the day, I see a lot of those spaces reserved for city employees vacant. So I don't know if they're being properly utilized. And then number three, we have the library, which already has an agreement with us for X amount, I think 10 parking spaces or whatever. So that is why the library parking lot is heavily utilized. Now, I'm down Del Mar once or twice a day, every day. So I'm very familiar with parking and the problems with the parking on Del Mar and in the area. But that's the major reason why the library parking lot is so heavily used. And I think we need to have a better parking management plan for that. And we need to reevaluate the city trucks and the city employees' spaces that are there, because most of the time they're just vacant.
I think it's vacant because of construction. I mean,
no, but forget about the construction.
But Beaches Parks and Rec's staff is in there. And Sharon Hyder's moved her office.
Well, I agree with you that we need to discuss this, but why don't we wait until we move into discussion, and then we can make some recommendations to staff at that time. So my question was just really, had you looked at that, and what were your conclusions? So I think you've answered that. Are there other questions on the short-term recommendations? If not, let's move to the long-term recommendations. Are there any questions on number 6, other than the ones that have already been voiced? Any questions on number 7, number 8, number 9?
On 8 and 9. Have there been communication thus far, recently, with the Presbyterian Church or the Kehoe Plaza?
Probably not within the last year or so. Jim Holloway's made contact with them previously.
All right.
I think it's probably been at least a year.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I still have a question on the logistics of these recommendations and what they're based on. If all of a sudden they're, in the long term, we're going to do 8A, which makes sense to me, and the south side of Cabrillo, that makes sense to me. What has to be done in order for this number 6 to actually go, do you have anything like you need another parking lot at 25 cars somewhere else to make this happen? How are you going to justify removing this next chunk with other than we need to find more parking? Do you have any kind of statistics like how much more, or how are we going to be able to get to the point of doing that?
Well, we'd find a lot that's underutilized, like we've mentioned the San Clemente Presbyterian Church lot. We have data that shows it's underutilized from our occupancy counts. And so we would net out the utilization at the peak demand, and that we would assume that's the excess supply that's available.
So that's the solution to making number 6 happen?
That's a potential solution.
It's a potential solution.
And I believe, so Michael raises a question that I think is probably important for people at home to understand. So with these long-term recommendations at some future date, when you find that there is increased parking supply, whether it's through negotiations that the city has entered into or some other source, at that point, then you would come forward to the Planning Commission and make a recommendation.
That's an excellent point. We would still have to come to the Planning Commission for all these recommendations to change the time limitations.
And you would say, we have 25 spaces in the Presbyterian lot, so therefore we think we can make this change. So at that time, we would look at those counts specifically, and we'd be able to make that determination.
And I think, Cliff, we would also reevaluate, do some survey work to kind of verify the conditions, because these are just point-in-time surveys, right? So we would verify what is the the long-term parkers at the particular given point in time, and what do we feel comfortable with if we come up with 25 new spaces, would that accommodate one of the lots or two of the lots, and do that evaluation. And it would require Planning Commission review and City Council review to do that.
Thank you for that, by the way. That's exactly where I was trying to head with that. How are we going to move into the... That's a great answer.
Okay. So, and no questions on 10? Okay. General parking requirements. Are there questions on 11? 12?
Yeah, I have a question on 11. I do not know if there's enforcement at this time with regard to the parking lots on Cabrillo and Granada. I know there's parking, I do see the enforcement on Avenida Del Mar, but is there enforcement right now, as we speak, on Granada and Cabrillo?
I think you're recommending under short-term that
No, but
that's
right now, is there enforcement?
Yes, it's my understanding there's enforcement, but I'm speaking for sheriffs right now, but there is enforcement, but there's probably, we've found a couple areas where there might be a need for improvement.
I have never seen a ticket on a car in lots 6A.
That's a recommendation 1 in the short term, is start doing that.
Yes, that is
I know that,
one of
but
the
right
areas
now,
we found that in the survey that cars were overstaying the time limit.
Okay. We really need to have a discussion, or the city council or the city manager needs to have a discussion with those folks, because we can talk all day about what we're trying to do here, but unless we have enforcement out there, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Okay. Number 14? 15? 16? Okay, on the next section, the general parking management recommendations. I have a question, Cliff. Is it possible to change the order of these recommendations so that number 23 was the first recommendation, and then the others follow as, possible solutions that might be part of that strategic plan?
Sure, definitely.
I would add 22, move up there with the, right underneath it, the smart lot thing.
I think that we need to do the basic things before we start evaluating the cost of smart parking spaces and sensors. I just think we need to do the basic parking stuff first.
Yeah, I was just thinking that should be up there near the parking study, that they could be conjunction with the study, but...
My question was, could we
can
basically
definitely-
change the way the recommendations are
Of
worded
course,
so that
yeah.
it is, we need to enact that implementation measure, and the implementation measure would consider these next 10 things among others. So those would all be considerations at that time. Okay, so is there anything on 17? 18, I wonder if, well, perhaps I should say that during discussion. I'll continue going because it's not a question. Number 19, number 20. Yes, Michael.
I got a problem with 20.
You have a question or a problem?
Well,
Because if you have a
Probably both,
problem, we
but-
probably want to have it in discussion if you have a question.
Well, I'm just wondering on what basis 90 minutes is going to, works better than 2 hours. I can't imagine people going downtown and having lunch and doing what they need to do less than 2 hours, and 90 minutes seems to really kind of dig into the normal shopping pattern. So I just wondered how effective that is.
Well, essentially, it just creates turnover, so it makes it so that the way those parking spaces are available in a quicker amount of time, so folks that need to visit for longer than 90 minutes would just park elsewhere. It's been in the past Walker studies that we've had. The council has not chosen to pursue it, but it's kept within there as a tool in which the council could consider. But it hasn't been pursued at this time.
But if in the wisdom of the planning commission you want to remove it, it wouldn't give us any heartburn.
Okay, so 21?
Yeah, I'd like a discussion on that, since you're also the downtown liaison, Cliff, but it's the downtown merchants that came to us, came to the city 20 years ago and had them removed. And so, to evaluate to put meters back in there, I would say that we ought to go forward to council, or why you wouldn't put in there a statement of fact, pending request from the Downtown Business Association.
Yeah, and that was something we talked about previously at our last meeting, was really that it needs to come from the business community, that they want that, and they see the value in having meters. So that's something that could be considered in the future.
Discussion.
Okay.
I'd like to discuss those two items.
Then anything about the smart parking spaces, any questions? Any questions about 23, other than my question about perhaps moving that and having that be an umbrella point?
I actually had a question about 22.
Okay.
I think when we looked at this before, we also said that there's a kind of a wider view of that. That is one potential, new technical tool, high-tech tool that we might be able to make use of. There may be other types of tools that are available that weren't available 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that we might want to look at. So did we lose that somewhere, or did I miss that we were just going to maybe expand that a little bit, or have another item that says, hey, there are new tools out there that have just emerged in the last 5 years, and we want to make sure we, do a survey of those to see what's in our toolbox?
I propose perhaps we can reword that so it says evaluate cost of smart parking spaces or other technologies.
Yeah, I think that's fine, just to say that we're open to whatever there might be out there.
Okay. So no other questions for Cliff? If not, we can open the public hearing. And Mr. Culbertson is stepping forward.
Larry Culbertson again. I agree with the 23 recommendations. Their implementation will help the parking situation on Avenida Del Mar. But I am concerned that parking on the further out streets will make it worse for the people that live on streets a couple of streets away, as I do. I'm over on Victoria. Fortunately, I'm down on the 200 block. But I see those employees going not just to Granada, but going out to Victoria and Rosa, down to Sarah. So, you know, in a way, what you're doing is just, you're going to make some angry neighbors a little bit further out. So I'm concerned about that. I believe we have sections. This is another. I'm probably, you know, this is not maybe not appropriate to bring this up right now, but I brought it up several times to you before, and And I'd like to mention it now. If you think I should bring it up somewhere else, let me know. But I believe that we have sections of the zoning ordinance that have been and continue to exacerbate our parking problems downtown. The sections were written to encourage and develop and support development. They need to be examined to see if they're more detrimental or beneficial for the parking situation. Some of the type of things that I'm talking about are the density bonuses and other incentives for affordable and senior housing projects. We talked about that at length when they were doing the affordable housing project. The way that the existing codes are, there could be another one of those right down the street. So that's going to undo all the good that you're doing with this the current endeavor. Mixed-use zones, special development standards. I could go on and on, but where would be the proper place to bring this up? I don't think it is probably part of what you're doing tonight.
No, but it's an important issue, Larry. We took the first step at looking at one of those issues, which was the grandfather issue, and we looked at that in a study session, and it was our first step in looking at it. But the Mobility Task Force is going to be looking at parking downtown. That's going to be one of the key issues that they're going to be concerned with. So, any information that you have or, opinions that you want to share with them, I'm sure would be very helpful to that process.
So they'll be looking at more than just shifting parking around. They'll be actually looking at the things that we're doing that are making it worse.
Well, I think the exact focus will be determined by that group, but I certainly think that input from the community, they're also looking for what they're going to be focusing on. So I think input from you to them, telling them that you think that's an important issue, would probably be helpful to them.
I'll do it. Thank you.
And then number 23 would be, once that process starts, that would be the perfect time to bring those kinds of issues up.
Great. Good point, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to address this issue? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and begin discussion. May I suggest that we begin with those short-term recommendations and we nail down our feedback on those first, and then move on to the other groups.
Could we just clarify something for me? We're making a recommendation to City Council, and are they going to use this to create direction to staff of how to implement it? It's not becoming an ordinance or anything, correct? So this is kind of a living, breathing approach to solving our parking problems. So whether or not every T is crossed and I dotted or every formula is figured out for these lots, this is just a starting direction, and it can change in a moment's notice if we find it's not working, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think for the length of discussion, this is an approach and a scheme, not necessarily the solution.
This is recommendations to council based on the analysis that
I mean, I would take a different approach if it was going into ordinances and all, but since it'll be direction to staff, I think we can take a slightly different direction on that.
That's judgment.
That's a good point. Michael?
Well, I think the recommendations seem to make some sense regarding restricting people, probably employees, from parking long-term in areas where we need to have people to come and shop. And so the recommendations in that sense, I think generally make sense, but what I guess what I don't see is the other side of the coin here, which is, in order to make these things happen, there needs to be a reaction somewhere else where more parking is going to be available. And I don't see much in the study that looks at the other side of the coin here, which is, where are we going to find places to move people who are parking in places like 7A and 8A and along these areas? There's just sort of a vague thing, well, maybe there's one church lot, you know? It doesn't seem like it's thought through on the follow-through side of how you're going to implement this. You know, if all of a sudden one parking lot comes up somewhere, and then all of a sudden you're going to do one incremental piece, I don't think it's quite clear. But I'd like to see more suggestions about alternatives to removing these the heavy-duty parking areas to other places, and more suggestions, I guess. I'd just like to see more feasibility of moving these employees.
Don?
Well, Michael, this is, they did a study, and they've got some data, and out of this data, they've made some best guess parking management recommendations, which we're tweaking here. I think, what we have down there is what we have, unless we do some dramatic breakthrough. And so the concept is we're out of parking. If you look at the percentage of occupancy down there, 80, 85%, 90%. We look at certain lots, and about 40% of them of the all-day lots are overparked on an average or greater than. And so the concept is to incrementally move them further outboard and look at where the data shows some of the private lots are underutilized, and see if we can enter an agreement with them and move them out. And they want to do this incrementally. Now, I think the concept is a very sound one. To maybe given council direction, now we go back and really fine-tune this. This is a concept. This is an idea of recommendations based on some data, and we're going to make our best guesstimates, and they've done that, to go forward. And then when you really go down to execute, that's where you go down and really do the detailed fine-tuning. And there's no use doing that now until you get the council go-ahead. So I think we're on, like I said in December, on message here. I think, the executive summary is downtown parking's full. The mayor at the time, Mayor Brown, looked at some of our minutes, I think, and directed a licensed data, the over-parking study. They've gone out and gotten that data. It's about 40% or greater in the all-day lots. And so now we want to fine-tune that, close one of them down, and start incrementally moving people outboard. And then before you do that, enter into negotiations with the Kehoe people and the Presbyterian lot, which we know by data and observation have some capacity. And then maybe we can take a look at the library lot for some other fine tweaks. So this is a straw man. This is a concept that we need to go forward to council with, to let them give direction, and staff can go execute. So I think we're getting there right now. We just need to discuss and tweak a little bit about the short and long-term recommendation. I agree with Chair Darden, that the parking study, professionally done, is what's really needed here. I concur with our techie over here, Commissioner Rulin, that the smart parking lot thing should go in parallel or in conjunction with that, so we can use information to make what we have more effective and efficient. So anyway, to going forward to the thing, I think we can make some fine-term adjustments to some of these short and long-term recommendations, and I think we have a high confidence level that the staff's done a good job getting something to go to council and answer their questions.
And I share your concern as far as some of the longer-term recommendations about the supply side of this, because it is a two-sided issue. I do think that as far as the short-term ones, staff has taken a relatively small bite. I do share Wayne's concern about if we're going to be directing people to the fire station or the senior center lot, we want to make sure that we're being mindful of their safety making sure that there's adequate lighting, and as you say here, that it's properly signed. That would be one concern that I would have, and the other tweak, as Don says, for me, I would like to see that under number 5, that when we're allocating parking for residents, that we have the hours be 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. I think that's if we're making it at 9 p.m., we really are discouraging them from parking there, and if we're going to discourage them, I think we need to be more honest about that.
I have a couple of comments, but Michael, the short term is a transitional one to determine what we need as far as more long-term parking options. So I think that it's a good start here. I do disagree with your 6 p.m., and let me tell you why. If we're trying to, what I see downtown at night is a real shortage of parking, especially during certain days, a real shortage because of the restaurant parking. And that really wasn't addressed. You said it was between 1 and 7 p.m. But really, at nighttime is when there's a real shortage of parking down there, because if it gets dark, people don't want to park farther away. They want to park as close as possible. So if we're trying to open up parking for restaurant parking, we should not say 6 o'clock, because that gives the opportunity for people to park in those that goes to those restaurants at 6 o'clock. And so I really disagree with that.
Do you think, Wayne, even we're talking about 15 people?
I think you have to you really go down there at night and take a look at the shortage of parking. And if
I understand there's a shortage of parking, but I don't know that it's these 15 residents. If it's their fault, there's a shortage of parking. Don't you think it's more the popularity of the restaurants?
Well, I think if we're
and the employee parking.
I think if we're trying to open up parking for customers and for restaurant parking, you do not stop them from the ability and to park in those lots. And I think that's important to understand. So I think we should really open up those lots and have the ability because restaurants really have been the driving force of the success of Avenida Del Mar. When I first came to town in 1984, the downtown was a disaster. The shopping was a disaster. There was one restaurant down there. And then over a period of time, antique stores opened up. And we had a lot of antique stores opening up. And what happened was the customers that shopped at the antique stores wanted a place to have lunch. So guess what happened? More and more restaurants opened up, and to accommodate the luncheon crowd and then the dinner crowd. And so it was really the antique stores really were the catalyst back then to really open up the downtown for more success. And now, because of that, the restaurants are the leading force down there and really leading the success of the downtown business, along with the boutiques that we have down there now. And so I don't think we should restrict the ability of those that go to restaurants we should have them find as much parking as possible during those evening hours. And so I think that 9 o'clock is fine for that. So that's my opinion on that. So,
Jim?
Yeah, I think one thing to look at with this is, those are interesting observations. It makes me think, but I also look at the fact that we aren't in this number 5. We aren't adding parking, right, for residents. We're saying we're continuing to allow residents to park there overnight, or overnight parking with the idea that it's going to be residents who take advantage of that. And I'm imagining, if there's a nice sort of, robust evening like there usually is on Del Mar now, if someone has to walk a block and a half down Del Mar to get to their parking, that's not so bad because there's people around, there's, businesses going on, it's a going concern, so it's not a kind of a scary proposition, right? But if I live around there and I live in an older building that doesn't have parking in it, so I have to rely on street parking or, public parking, then, I'll park someplace, and if I've got to park farther away than Del Mar, because I live on Del Mar, or just below Del Mar, say, so I have to park farther away, it does become a scarier proposition for the resident, and it becomes a scarier proposition on a daily basis, I would imagine, if they're sort of pushed off into streets where they've got to walk. Some of those streets don't even have sidewalks on them and things like that. So as long as we're talking about really kind of keeping it the same for them, except moving the time back a bit so that when they get home from work, say between 5 and 6, they've got a place to park and then go home. They don't have to, as Julia was saying, they don't have to run out at 8 o'clock at night after dinner and try to move their car and do something like that. That small convenience. I think that's probably going to be okay. And I'll say probably for all of these items that we have in here, and kind of as Bart alluded to, this is a living document too. These are call them to some extent experiments. So we can always come back and revisit and say, you know what, this isn't working for this type of resident or that type of customer. So we can come and readjust it as well. But what I'm imagining for here is that it'll be a bit of a convenience, and a little bit safer perhaps for the residents, and may not be any more of an impact to the restaurant customers at night than it is right now.
Do we actually know that these are residents that are parking in Lot 7A?
The ones that were stayed overnight, those 15 cars, we don't know if they're residents.
Yeah.
It could be a resident or it could be a non-resident. But they are permitted.
Well, the
Correct.
ones that were there at 5:20 in the morning are likely residents, not employees. How many were in that lot, do you know?
15.
7.
7, yes, thank you.
And we're speaking specifically of permitted people here, right? That verbiage is going to get changed. This is the one the verbiage was going to get changed, where we're talking about this is allowed.
Permits are exempt.
The permits are exempt
Yes,
from
yeah,
enforcement.
we talked about, with permit for 5.
Yeah. The reason I'm saying about 7A, it has the Paseo right into Del Mar, into the restaurant areas. And so I think it's important for that particular lot to be utilized as much as possible by the shoppers and to restaurant patrons. And that's why I'm saying 7A is such an important lot for shoppers. So how many total how many total parking spaces in 7A?
Give me one moment, I can find
I
that
think
out.
it's something like 32.
32?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and there were 7 all-night parkers there, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering if we allow that, if people will now, in the neighborhood, saying, well, then that's the place we can park at night, and so for the 7 then will go up to a lot more than 7. And I'm just saying that...
But they have that permission now. Or
Yes,
that
they can
building
park
now.
there legally now.
The permitted parkers are exempt from the prohibition between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m.
That's correct.
And I would certainly be more hesitant if we were saying, allow more of this type of parking, but we're really saying, pretty much keep it, allow the residents down there essentially to continue to do what they do.
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying that 7A is one of the most important parking spaces and parking lots because of the Paseo and with direct access to Avenue Del Mar and to the restaurants down there.
I agree with you, Wayne, and I think that's why it is a good recommendation to have it shift to a 3-hour lot. I just think it's just, I think we are really making it prohibitive for residents to park there if we say 9 p.m. So if we're going to make it prohibitive, I think we ought to be honest about it and say that we're going to prohibit them from parking there and have a discussion about that.
Just to throw a snag in this, we're assuming people are working from 8 to 5, and a lot of people don't. If they're working nights or something, this whole thing shoots up, so it almost seems these residents should have their own parking pass for this parking lot, and is provided by the person they're renting from, and when they leave, it goes back to the renter, and
Well, I mean, they have that in effect now, right? If they're using
they're using the regular parking pass, so any of us could go do exactly what they're doing, and maybe they deserve a special,
So you're saying maybe there should be, one of our recommendations should be that there's
maybe
a
an
special
additional
residence
permit
parking
type
permit.
for that particular occupant.
I would
a good
agree with.
idea.
I would agree with that. I
Yeah.
think we actually discussed that a little bit
Yeah,
last meeting.
and I think
when
maybe
you
just
two were absent.
something that additional permit types should be considered. I don't know if we need to solve it now. That's why I say this is living, breathing. It's going to come back to us.
Right, it
if
is.
anything's implemented, and just give that as an option. And
I'm just wondering also about the enforcement. I don't think there's going to be enforcement after 5, 6 o'clock at night, so, that's an issue also.
Most of the parking enforcement is really RSVP.
RSVPs, they're not going to go out at night.
And so I think that's who I see down there enforcing, but I don't.
They're there during the day.
And when they go home, I think the official sheriff duty people are patrolling in their cars.
The sheriff does not give parking tickets.
So, so far, I haven't heard any disagreement with anybody on 1, 2, or 4, is that correct? So, we're talking, and it sounds like there are 2 issues that we've expressed some concern about on 3 and 6, so maybe if we can, Mr. City Attorney, do we, since these are within the recommendation, can we just cast straw votes on those items like we did with the general plan, and just see kind of where everybody is on those, so we can...
Also point out, too, at last meeting, which I think you two were absent, that Commissioner Ruin made a point about a path of travel from some of these lots. He brought it up, and I think it was in the video from when we discussed even coming downhill from the Presbyterian lot and this particular lot also, that somehow getting the ponies back and forth in the dark, lighting. I think the downtown, Cliff, you're in the downtown area in the new undergrounding and Paseos. I don't know if that alleyway is going to extend that far east to the Rosa.
Basically, it'll terminate at Cabrillo and then go to, actually it does go down that way towards Rosa.
Maybe almost to Victoria or Rosa, doesn't it? So there might be well lit now. Well, that was a discussion in the December
At the meeting, the
we had
original
here
meeting
when
for
you
this.
two were absent. So
No, we were at that meeting. It's the first parking meeting, we were both here.
that's right. That's why. Well, I thought you brought it up, Jim, that you would discuss concern about a path of travel.
Well, so I think that's something, it sounds like I'm hearing agreement on number 3 with Wayne's point. I certainly agree with that looking at the lighting and the path of travel in general would be an important part of making that recommendation. So with that, would everybody be able to support number 3?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So then on number 5, there's the issue of whether, how many of us would be comfortable with changing the hours to 6 and then supporting number 5? Actually, show of hands. How many people would support that? Okay, how many people would prefer to have it be 9 p.m.? Art, I didn't see you.
I think this is one where you have a separate permit. I look for an alternate.
Okay. So I think
it's
that's...
fine if it goes in there, but I think when it comes back to us, we're probably going to study it extremely deeply.
Okay, so we might say, change the language of that to say, but allow residents, or consider special, what do you have, Jim?
Well, I thought Barb made a really good point there, and, it's like an aha for me. It's like, if I was a savvy, city resident that had the parking pass, and I knew that, that it was at 6 p.m., and I knew that I could all of a sudden park there and not have to worry about the time limit, right? Even though I'm not parking there as a resident. So I like the idea of creating some kind of a permit that the resident would be separate from just the regular city permit. And I think that helps a little bit.
And so if we have that, so I think we all nodded and thought that was a good idea. So while that could be a separate recommendation, how would it impact the hours that one could park there if you had a residence permit?
Well, I don't think that matters one way or the other, but,
Well, I think it matters. It's part of this recommendation, so we have to...
Yeah. I don't know how you eliminate the issue of someone parking there 3 hours before because it's a 3-hour limit.
Right.
So the 6 p.m., the drawback is that someone could park there at 3 o'clock. Not that they would, because, like most of us get home at around 5:30, right? So maybe that's not an issue so much. It's really up to the discussion of the planning commission what time you
As far
like.
as 9 p.m., I see that really is 6 p.m.
Yeah.
in reality.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it should be posted as 6. I think 9 would work. People will be savvy very quickly. Live there.
Okay, all right, so it sounds like the majority would like to leave that at 9 p.m. and then add a number 6, which would be to investigate residential permits. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to the long-term recommendations. On the first point, number 6, Don had suggested that, just for clarity, that 7A not be repeated. And I'm assuming that everybody wants this to stay at, the same majority would prefer to have this stay at 9 p.m.
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry. I need to go back here just a moment to short-term, because I think we need recommendations there that to really investigate when these lots can be cleaned, because that they're not being cleaned, if in fact, and I think it's really important to do that.
I think that is a good point.
And also enforcement, and to recommend more enforcement of these lots if we're going to be putting some time limits here.
No,
on
we have,
these
but
things.
that is point number 1.
That's number 1.
Enforce, yes,
Wayne,
okay.
could we put that just under the general management recommendations?
That's a very good point.
That's fine.
One thing they might have to do with the cleaning of the lots, they might find which might cause some confusion, but there might have to be, on Thursday nights, this lot is not an all-night lot, and on Tuesday nights, this lot is not, it might end
Chair
up being
Darden, I
something
believe
like
that's
that.
the case, but I can't say 100% certainty.
Okay. Yeah, somewhere there was something about street cleaning in our report, but I can't remember where it was.
I recall seeing it, but I just don't know the specifics of it, so I didn't want to say one way or the other.
Well, those were street cleanings, not parking lot cleanings. Those were street
So
cleanings.
just
It is
so
a
I'm
good
clear,
point, Wayne.
for the general recommendation, it's to ensure that there is a mechanism for cleaning the lots for the all-night parking.
Downtown.
That's a good way to express it.
Something like that.
Are you comfortable with that, Wayne?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. So I believe we said number 6 stays as is, except for the removal of 7A. Number 7, did anybody have any concerns about that? Okay. And then, we have 8, which is for the Presbyterian Church. We have 9, which is for the Keogh lot. I wonder, to Michael's point, I wonder, should we have something more general about investigate, other ways to increase the parking supply? Perhaps rather than limiting it just to those 2 lots?
Well, we actually, under general parking management recommendations, we do have a recommendation there to continue to convert private lots to public lots, number 13.
We talked about the library parking lot. Where does that come up under all of this?
Why don't we discuss that now?
Well, I did have one comment on 8 and maybe 9. I just thought that, like we have for the fire department, we need to maybe include some verbiage in there about essentially wayfinding or pathfinding to get to and from there, especially at night. It's the same issue that we have with the other parking lot for employees, because it is a little kind of on the edge.
I think that's a good idea. Everybody okay with that?
For number 9, that was?
8 and 9.
8 and 9.
Wayne, may I make a suggestion that we discuss that as part of the strategic package?
No, that's fine.
As far as the library? Because I think that might because staff would need to make some evaluations, and maybe that's the appropriate place to do that.
Right. And also, I just wanted to point out again, they need to revise where the 3-hour parking, 2-hour parking area
On the map.
Ends at the 200 block of Avenue de Del Mar. Sorry to go back and forth, but
No,
these are
it's-
things that are popping in my mind here.
No, that's important to capture those. Okay, so under general parking recommendations, are there any of the current policies that anybody feels that we should not continue? Okay, so we're fine with those, 11 through 16.
Other than like this continued enforcement of all posted parking regulations, is there a recommendation to council? I guess the RSVP are the parking enforcers.
Yes, they are.
But they don't work nights.
No, they do not.
Is this in their contract, or is this the way the sheriff approaches it, or?
No, they do not work at night. Although, several years ago, the city hired a company, I remember, to monitor in the pride zone area for parking and so forth.
That's what that goes with the sweeping contract in the pride area.
This was at night. They hired a contract company to enforce more parking regulations in the pride zone area because it was really a problem there, to say the least. So, perhaps we could have a recommendation that, in fact, the city investigate the possibility of hiring a contract company for enforcement of those lots in the evening hours or something of that nature, because the RSVPs are not going to do that.
Well, maybe under the enforcement one, it could say, enforce the time limits, blah, 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 and consider, other methods such as, or supplemental methods such as private contractors.
Yeah, I think under number one, maybe we just add something that enforcement time limits, including more effective ways to enforce it during nighttime hours.
Sounds good.
Good point, Jim.
Okay, then starting with the strategic, with the general parking management recommendations, is everybody comfortable moving 23 up and having that be an umbrella statement, and then saying, that the remainder are tactics that would be considered, among others, as part of that strategic plan?
I'd be comfortable with that.
What do you mean moving the other ones? You mean all the
The
other?
23 is the is having it.
It should go to the top.
And that saying that 17 through 22 are some of the implementations, or I'm sorry, some of the strategies that could be considered as part of the plan.
Well, I think we should really eliminate the 90-minute parking.
Oh, yeah, we'll go through and talk about each of those individually.
Okay.
But just as far as creating a hierarchy.
Sure, that's fine.
No, that's
Okay.
fine. I agree with that.
And I'm okay with that, but I do have something of an issue with 17, like I said before, in that I think at least some of that could be in the short-term recommendations, because there are probably some simple and inexpensive solutions to get some bike parking down there, kind of build a massive bike parking without much effort, without much cost. So I have no problem with it being in the long-term recommendations, but it seems like
It should be more short-term.
we could do something along
So
these lines.
investigate feasibility or investigate methods to, or
Yeah,
something,
I agree.
Yeah.
It should be more short-term.
Yeah, so we don't need anything big and comprehensive.
Even if we had like 7 spaces there, 7 parking, not parking spaces taken away, but
bike spaces.
Bike spaces.
There's even, we talked,
Consider
I don't know, like
a
3
number
years
7
ago.
for the short term.
Down by the theater, down there on the corner of Ola Vista and Cabrillo, that they, red striping one of the spots there because it blocked the line of sights. Well, we never red striped it, but one solution would be to put a bike corral there, so you can still see through.
Well, and you know where they were considering for the plan, Jim, was in those triangular areas along Del Mar.
Oh, right,
There's some
yeah.
really
Right.
good locations.
Around the bulb outs.
So those are, anyway, I just don't think we need to wait for the long term to do
You're
some
right.
of those
You're
things,
absolutely
is my
right.
only
I
point.
agree.
It
We
sounds
make
like
that
there's
a
agreement.
seven
So that
and-
should be number 7.
Number 7,
short term.
short-term recommendations.
Okay, so then 18, I would just like to make sure that we have language that says something like, when available, because I don't think we can require them to use off-site employee parking lots if we don't have them. So, some kind of language that indicates that there's supply.
Yep.
Is everybody all right with 19, changing the distance to 900 feet for employees?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm with Wayne on number 20. I think 2 hours is essential.
This 90 minutes been floating around for too long. We need to eliminate it.
I think
It's an irritant.
Yeah, well, and I think it sets a preference for shoppers versus diners, and diners are pretty, as you said, pretty important part of the vitality downtown, so.
So we just scratch $20 out?
I would.
I would, yeah.
Except for Cossador Lane.
Okay, 21. Don had suggestion of having language that said at the,
Based upon a request from the Downtown Business Association.
Well,
they wanted it eliminated, and they need to come back to us before staff and everybody else, I think. Otherwise, it's a tool. I mean, parking meters are a tool for parking management. That's why it's in here as a straw man, I know. And when you have a very serious concern about it, and I kind of share that. I mean, but I think the language, if we're going to leave it in there, is okay. Leave it as a parking management, but before you go forward with any of this particular strategy is you need the Downtown Business Association has to come forward to me with a very strong majority. To say, all right, put them back in.
I would say that this may, now we're talking long-term here, and we're talking like this may or may not ever happen kind of a thing, so like you were saying, it's not an ordinance, we're not trying, I don't want to, you might be speaking differently if this was like a hardcore, this is what we're going to be doing. But I think in the language, we definitely want the DBA's input, and we should probably put that in there. But I don't think that we should have a tool and then say, well, we're only going to use this tool if we get this permission from some other agency. I think that it's like, well, if we want to look at this tool, we want to, we should require ourselves to go and get their input and get their buy-in. But I don't think it should not. We shouldn't need their permission to use that as a tool if the city needs to do that.
I kind of agree with that type of approach.
Well, if we ever wanted to use this as a tool and get their input, we also need a customer survey in light of that, because if merchants come to us and say, oh, we want parking meters down here, we need to have more of a balanced approach and say, okay, fine, well, let's get some customer input also.
Maybe we put something about getting input from stakeholders such as downtown business and customers.
That would be fine.
So something like to the effect of, with the input of community stakeholders evaluate paid parking. Beginning.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be fine with me.
That'd be good.
Okay. And then number 22, Jim, you had said that perhaps it would be, you'd like that to be broader and say investigate new technologies such as.
Yeah, I think the verbiage we have in here is fine. I think it's fine to call this out specifically. I just, don't want to limit it to that. That's my only concern.
So maybe just new technologies such as. Okay. And I wonder if this obviously would be something that would be considered as part of a general strategy for the area, but I wonder if we would want to call out, evaluate purchasing, leasing, or building new parking to add to the supply as one of the items.
Well, where's the money going to come from?
Well, it's evaluate.
We were going to talk also about the library parking lot on this.
Okay.
So that's important to do.
Yeah, I think something about staff to evaluate the library parking lot.
Well, with regard, I know that we have Park and Rec employees there, but we've got 12 parking spaces, and I think we need to reevaluate the employee.
So evaluate current utilization and determine the best strategies for
Evaluate
library lot.
included parking management strategies for the library parking lot, considering both the city employee and library employee spaces.
That was excellent.
And, okay, and also we need to consider residents who, park there during the day also. If they park there at night, sometimes they don't move their cars, and that's one of the reasons it is so impacted.
Okay. So did I hear that, was there support for evaluate leasing, purchasing, or building new parking to add to the downtown supply as part of the strategic plan?
I would support that.
And also, as part of one of our other implementation measures, I believe, was to evaluate a circulator for that area. Would we want to call that out?
That's in the
here?
general plan, I think, right?
Yeah.
In the mobility section.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's, I'm just wondering if we just want to call it out because we think it's something that's important to be considered as part of the strategic plan.
Wouldn't that be brought out in the parking study?
Similar to 23, you could just pull off the implementation, say initiate new general plan implementation, circulator, whatever the wording is for that circulator.
Yeah, which I know is it has some sort of evaluate, because if we weren't, are we comfortable with that? We've already
Okay.
got it in the general plan.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, is there anything that we have not considered that anybody wants to add? Michael?
Well, at Cal State Fullerton, when I was there, we had a huge parking issue. And two things that helped more than anything else to relieve the parking situation was, one, valet parking. Were we able to increase the amount of cars in the lot by having it an organized parking and made the users happy because then they could get out and get going to the campus without having to drive around for minutes or hours to find a spot. The other was a shuttle bus that shuttled people to off-site parking when we didn't have enough on the campus.
That's the circulator. The term we were using, circulator, is the same thing that you're talking about with the shuttle bus.
Okay.
And the valet parking, I know there's a pilot program that's under consideration, but it maybe wouldn't be a bad idea to call that out.
Yeah, if I could just finish, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying that there's issues with both of those things, but there's also things that those can remedy. And it might be initially a hard thing to come up with a shuttle bus or think about that, but I think there are recommendations that make sense. They certainly have made sense in other situations. So I just feel like they're lacking here, so that could be added.
Yeah, and I think we did add the shuttle bus as the circulator implementation measure, but I would agree that I think it's good to call out the valet program because I know they're working on it now to evaluate it, but I think it would be a good recommendation to show support for it. Is there support for that?
Well, I think it's
Would the valet be sponsored by the city or by the DBA?
I'd say work with the DBA to consider or evaluate feasibility of valet programs, and then can look at what types of programs might make sense.
I don't know if the city is going to be really enthralled with them being the sponsor of a valet parking. So that's why I'm saying it should be the responsibility of the DBA.
And currently, that's who's sponsoring it.
And then we need to be very specific about that, I think.
I would agree with that.
I think we'll...
Say let's put it in there. Usually merchants do that, restaurants, owners do that for customers.
So maybe it's encourage the DBA to pursue pilot programs to
DBA and local merchants.
well,
What's working on it right now?
There's certain things we can do as a city, too, with our city lots, with the valet, by allowing double parking and tandem parking and whatnot, that if the DBA paid for the service, we might be able to make for free some spaces available. But I think the most important thing in this whole document is the conclusions, and I don't think we should not discuss those. I think they're very well written. They sum it up, and I think that's really where the direction of what everything that preceded is
I think you're right.
brought together, and I think a good job on writing that, and I think that tells the story.
Yes, great.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment. Philosophically, parking solutions are resolved not by just the city. They're really resolved by everyone, including the DBA. And I'm an associate member of the DBA, and I have to say I'm very disappointed that we do not have participation here by merchants in this room tonight. The responsibility should not be made upon the city to come up with solutions. It needs to be, everyone needs to come up with solutions and implement those solutions. So philosophically, I wanted to say that.
I think that's a really good point, and probably to add to that, local residences around there, particularly like the apartment complexes that don't have much parking, that sort of thing. They are a big stakeholder and part of our discussion, obviously. So bringing them into the conversation would be good as well. So.
Good point.
Participant.
Michael?
Just to kind of make a placeholder here, there's been a lot of discussion about doing parking structures in San Clemente, good, bad, and indifferent. And this doesn't even mention it at all, and I'm not saying we should have them or not have them, but I'm wondering if we would want to consider a recommendation not to pursue that at this time?
We added number 24, that was to evaluate purchasing, building, or leasing additional parking.
Okay, that's how you're going to handle it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And also, that's why I mentioned I think it's covered in the conclusions very clearly, that the comprehensive parking strategy, and that would be part of that whole study.
Okay, and Don?
No, I'd just like to echo and build on Bart's thing. The conclusions are very well written, and I know we've debated it a lot in 2 or 3 sessions here, but I want to commend the city staff and our intern for, this is a good Walker parking study at a bargain-based price, and it was very well thought out, and I think I want to commend the city staff for taking this approach, and we can go forward to the council with something, and you have data to back it up. And so I think with the comments we've kind of polished off here tonight, I think it's ready to go forward.
Yeah, I think we are our own best parking consultants. I don't think we have to hire parking consultants to tell us what we need to do. We know best what to do. So if the city starts hiring parking consultants again, I think we need to protest. So thank you, staff.
So I know I think we need to vote to make these recommendations. I do want to congratulate the commission. I think that was a very cooperative effort that I think resulted in some slight improvements on what was a very good document. So I think we're sending some well thought out recommendations to council. Is there a motion that we do so?
I'll make a motion. I just want to, I'm looking at staff recommendations. Do we just want to move that we forward the recommendations presented by staff and amended tonight to City Council? Mm-hmm. I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, 6-0. All right. That brings us to reports of commissioners and staff, because apparently I was able to get that in the right section of my binder. By the way, I think this is the appropriate time to thank our administrative assistants who so ably put these binders together, because obviously it's not easy.
I couldn't put mine together either. It was, mishmashed all over, so.
We knew that.
Stop that. It was terrible.
All right,
The Coastal Advisory Committee will meet tomorrow night, and we're discussing the second draft, I believe it is, of the land use plan that's been put together by staff and the consultant. It's about a 85% document, because we're missing a lot of the ESHA study, I guess, that will come later. And so it's a 179-page masterpiece that we'll work our way through tomorrow night.
great. All right, well, congratulations to our new committee and task force members, and we look forward to the work you're going to be doing in the coming months. And perhaps it's time to adjourn?
If there's nothing else, I'll move we adjourn to the study session to be held at 6 p.m. on January 21st, 2015, in council chambers at City Hall located at 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente, California.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
What about this planning commission seminar?
Break up.